the cheapest and easiest ways to add cardio to your clinic gym hybrid. That's a picture of my old gym. So we're going to talk again about these 4 classifications: entry level stuff, the cheapest, easiest stuff you could buy on Amazon and implement 2 days from now. We'll talk about the intermediate level stuff, a little more costly, takes a little more floor plan, a little more planning. And we'll talk about advanced levels. And then we'll also talk about specialty and plyo stuff, because I think that can fill the role again without blowing the bank, or breaking the bank, I should say. So why is this so important? So if you are offering a fitness offering in your gym, I think it's a desire of a lot of people to add in a cardio component at the end. Maybe the last 5 to 10 minutes of class, you do some cardio. It's also the easiest thing to give up. So really consider if you want to do it. For example, I have a client and they work primarily with triathletes, and he says they're doing plenty of cardio. They don't need mine at the end. So they just use the final 5 to 10 minutes of class for a little bit of corrective, a little bit of cool down, talk about stuff. Doesn't even waste his time on cardio, because these people are running, riding, and swimming every week. So why do more? But your group is different. So definitely set up that cardio for your group. So my gym, I had 5,000 square feet. That's a lot of space. But I really want to talk today about what happens if you have a tenth of that space, 500 square feet. So let's start there with the entry level stuff. I think at the very entry level, if you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of space, there's still a few pieces of equipment that are really good. And this is stuff you can even add into rehab. For example, in this level, I see the jump rope, running, battle ropes, and the sled. Sleds you could argue with. But those first 3, jump ropes, running, and battle ropes. Jump rope is probably one of the unsung heroes of posture improvement. You want to improve somebody's posture, man, hand them a jump rope, teach them how to jump rope, because when they mess up or they get lazy or they hunch down, the rope whips them. They whip themselves, and they remind themselves to stay nice and upright. I think it's great for that kind of elastic rebound strength. It's great for bone density. There's a lot of good that comes from jump rope. So jump ropes, you can find them decent quality jump ropes for $15 to $20. Hell, I saw some on Amazon for as cheap as $4. I don't know the quality, but it's worth a try. This is a great exercise. It's tough. You sweat a lot. And especially with people who are going through rehab and whatnot, they have to engage their core. They have to brace. They have to create some stiffness in the right ways to really be able to jump rope. So I think it's a fantastic place to start. Now, one little caveat. If you're going to do jump rope, you need some ceiling height. You can't have somebody jumping rope and catch that jump rope on your fire sprinkler, right? Ask me how I know. I had somebody jumping rope in our old place with our small rehab area, and they damn near hit the fire sprinkler. I also almost took it out with the head of a driver, had somebody swinging a backswing in golf. Anyways, jump rope, cheap, easy. You can get, 4 different lengths of jump ropes, pretty cheap. I really like the ones from Rogue Fitness, the licorice jump ropes, because they are color coded. How about running? This is free, essentially, as long as it's safe to do so, maybe in your parking lot or you have a street right next to your business. And it's great if you think this is safe. Now, if you're in a really busy shopping plaza, maybe this isn't the best option. But if it is, I would say do yourself a favor and have some pre-measured lengths, and try and find either a marker or a landscape feature, or something that tells them to turn around. Maybe they get to a stop sign on Maple Street, they turn around, or you measure out 400 meters and get some street marking paint that's available at Home Depot. It's what they mark storm drains and stuff with, that orange paint, and just make a mark there and put some numbers there so it looks official. Mark the street at 400 meters and maybe again at 800 meters, but super easy. Now, I will tell you that if you're working in weight loss and you have some heavier clients, they might not be able to run, or they might not like it a lot because it hurts, or they're worried about it, or they got injured running. So think about that. And also, what will you do in inclement weather? So if it's snowing, rainy, if it's icy outside, what's your alternative to running? All right. But heck, get people to run, and it just does amazing things. So running is a great option if you don't have any space. If I only had 200 square feet and I was trying to run classes of 4, I think I would probably have them run out in the parking lot or something, because then we don't get that conglomeration of bodies inside the room. All right. Now, one other thing is battle ropes. I mean, these are so cheap. They they work well. Uh, and also, more than anything else, man, they look cool. Like, think about how many commercials you've seen around the Super Bowl where they got some athlete. What are they always doing? They're always doing battle ropes, right? Like, it's the international sign for this is a super cool workout person. Like, battle ropes are awesome. So people love doing them. Good news is they're cheap. Uh, Their good news is also all you need to attach them is you can have a wall anchor. I mean, I was on Amazon and there's a $15 battle rope fitness anchor. It's just a hoop that you attach to the wall. I've even done this at a Perform Better seminar where they had 4 battle ropes going. Now, this is a very large kind of a convention ballroom, 4 battle ropes going, and they were just anchored around the 4 legs of a folding chair. They just had somebody sit in the folding chair and they had a battle rope going kind of out each direction. So if you're out in a parking lot or something, you got some battle ropes, it's awesome. Here's what I've learned about battle ropes. Number one, you do need some space because you have to extend that rope out, right? And if it's only a 10-foot long rope or you're only 10 feet away from the wall, that person's going to swing it hard. It's going to rip that anchor on the wall. You need that weight that comes from the length of the battle rope. Okay. Second thing I've learned, they sell different sizes. Usually it goes 1 inch, 1.5 inches, 2 inch, and 2.5 inch. If I were to guess, I think this woman is dealing with a 2.5 inch rope. It's pretty big. I find that's too big for most people. I would, instead of a battle rope, use an 1.5 inch. I'm sorry, instead of a 2.5 or 2 inch battle rope, I'd use an 1.5 inch. A little bit easier to manage. They can create bigger waves, and it's a whole lot easier to store. These big 2 and 2.5 inch ropes, they don't coil up real easy. So they're a pain in the ass to store, but give that some thought. There's also those, what are they called? They're not battle ropes. They're kind of like a long elastic band that you kind of use. Oh, Alex Sarazin told me about them. I can't remember the name of them. Either way, look into those. Super easy to store because storage is going to be a large part of this, right? That's one of the limitations in general of cardio equipment. You don't want to have to store that stuff, or you're going to have to store it. So where do you take it? You know, if you only have 400 square feet and you put 2 Echo bikes in there, 2 air bikes, you just chewed up a lot of square footage. So whatever you're going to use, make sure that you can store it. Okay. So I like 1.5 inch ropes as long as you have the length. I'll also put on this list sleds. Now, sleds are tough. They're kind of expensive. You got to load them up. Early on, I think get a drag sled. This is a pushing sled, but get a drag sled. You can get them cheap off like different equipment suppliers like Rogue and Perform Better. And, you know, only use them when you do partner workouts and put the partner on it so that the partner gets drugged one way and then they switch and drug the other way. If you don't have a lot of space, I wouldn't use the sled that you had to load with plates because you don't have plates, because you don't have space for plates, because you don't have space for bars, and you don't have space for a squat rack. Instead, find a drag sled that you can load up with kettlebells or sandbags or something, whatever the hell you have in your office, bodies. Hell, it's easy. But the other thing is when you go to store it, these things are tough to store. They're kind of gangly. They don't really fit right. They don't fold up. They're just there. So if you have the square footage, it's awesome. If you don't, then find something that's useful. Nowadays, with some of those drag sleds, one of the nice things is that the post in the center of it that takes plates, it folds down. And so that allows you to store it easy, transport it easy and everything. The other thing with sleds is you got to have turf. You got to have a slidey surface, either turf or carpet. If this gentleman was to take his sled across to where those racks are and try and slide it on the rubber, it just ain't going to work. So if you have all rubber flooring, you can look at the Tank by Torque Fitness. It's wheeled and it has like a brake on the wheel so that you can set how hard of resistance it has to turn the wheel. That works pretty good. We have one client that uses it up and down her carpeted hallway that she finds that clients really love it. One advantage is in this, you know, there is no eccentric loading of the lower limb. And so when people are coming out of ankle, knee, hip rehab, even spine rehab, it's the eccentric portion that's often difficult to control. And they don't have to deal with the eccentric portion here. There's only the concentric push of that sled. Plus, transferring all that energy from their arms to their legs means they've got to organize their core, right? They've got to get everything stacked and strong to be able to transmit that force. And you'll see when you put young kids on a sled, their legs push hard, but they just can't hold their arms in the right position, and they end up kind of noodling apart. So it has a lot of great transfer. Sleds are awesome. There's a lot of options. I remember back in the day, was it 2023? So we opened our gym in 2013, and it was tough to get a hold of sleds. You just couldn't find them. So it's funny now, there's hell on Amazon. I looked, there's 52 different good sleds available. Find one that works for you. If you do have one that you're going to do pushing, I really like the height of these handles, especially for less fit clients. If I was working with athletes on a high school football team or collegiate team, man, I'd have those low handles, but do yourself a favor. Get one that has those high handles because it's so easy for people to use. And then the other thing is, I would not encourage people to turn the sled around. I would want it going forward and back. Think of it stuck on railroad tracks. Every injury I've ever seen from sleds is always in when it's turning around. I had a client, they swung the sled around and nailed another client in the freaking medial or the lateral malleolus. That had to hurt, man. A couple 100 pounds of sled hitting you right on the malleolus. It hurt like hell. I would just have lanes and I would just go forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. I wouldn't mess with turning it around. That's one thing I do like about that tank, the Torque by Torque Fitness. You can use it forward, back quite well. All right. So that's a sled. Well, let's dive in real quick to this other area, the specialty or plyo or multi-use cardio equipment. These can be cheap. They can be fun. They can be easy. Although I don't know if they're really purely cardio, they offer a lot of great aspects. And in here are some things to think about: agility ladders, foam boxes, mini hurdles, and slam balls. All right. I think these are great options. They don't take up a lot of space. They don't cost a whole lot of money, except the foam boxes. And clients absolutely love them. So highly recommend it. All right. So agility ladders. I didn't think that general population clients would love this as much as they do. They will blow you away with how much they love these agility ladders, especially older women. I don't know why. I don't know if it reminds them of dance team or what is that called? Choreography or whatever the hell it does. But they absolutely love agility ladders. Throw that sucker down, teach them different routines. And I would say the older the client, the more they're going to love this. Let me say that again. The older the client, the more they're going to love agility ladders. Teach very simple patterns and then try and mix it up or add in patterns. So teach them a simple pattern and then see if they can throw a ball back and forth with a partner while they're doing the pattern. See if they can recite the Pledge of Allegiance or look up and left and down and right and all these areas without screwing up the pattern. They love the challenge, and I think it's really good for that cognition. I can't tell you how great these are. They don't take up any space. They fold up in on themselves. You usually get a zippered case with them. You can get them pretty cheap at every sporting goods store around, including Amazon. But if you don't have a lot of space, these are great. One little tip: if you don't have a lot of space, put these things diagonally in your room. You get the longest length if you go diagonal, and it forces people to kind of fall in line and not just be spilling everywhere. You'll be surprised by the organization. I love agility ladders. All right. Foam boxes. Now, I would only have foam boxes. I would not put wood boxes or steel boxes if I only had 400 square feet. I'd only use foam boxes. Why? Number one, there's no hard edge for anybody to fall and shave skin off their shin with it. I've seen it. It looks gnarly. People don't appreciate it. They're also fairly easy to handle. And if they fall on somebody, tip over, or whatever, it doesn't hurt anybody. I love it. You can also use them for a lot of your rehab. It can be where somebody's sitting and you're progressively getting them to work on a deeper and deeper squat, and that foam box is checking them. They're great for jumping up on or stepping up on or jumping over. Whatever it is, there's a million uses for foam boxes. These are not cheap. To get a set like these on the left anymore, if you can get them, number one, they're massive, so the shipping is expensive. Number two, they're expensive to produce because it's got to be foam that's stiff enough for people to stand on without being so hard that it hurts when you land on it. I think a set like that on the left is about $1,500 for the entire set. I think you can get them even more expensive. You can get cheaper ones, but I'd be worried about the quality of the foam and the sewing in the vinyl. Anyways, tons of uses. If you get them, get it progressively. I would say that if you're going to be blending rehab and exercise, that the top 4 or 5 here are probably more useful than this big one at the bottom. The big one at the bottom is great if you're like a CrossFit athlete, but let's be real. What are you really getting your clients to use, and what are you encouraging them to do? That green one would have a ton of use all the time in rehab. All right, so I think plyo boxes are great. Mini hurdles. This one's a little bit controversial. I've heard people say, I'll never use mini hurdles. I had, a friend of mine, he had a client impaled by a mini hurdle. I don't know how that happens, but mini hurdles are great. I think they're basically like a juiced up version of agility ladder. I think mini hurdles are fantastic and a good use of space. They get out of the way, they fold up, you can take them anywhere, and people seem to enjoy them as long as you're not too aggressive. The repeated jumping can be a little bit tough for older folks and the repeated landings. But if that's the case, have them move through the hurdles, meaning forward, over, back, over, forward, over, back, over, and then do that facing different directions. That quick feet drill could save their life. It's fall prevention, training through it. So I like mini hurdles. If you don't, I'd love to hear your opinion on it. Either way, just go ahead and post in the comments. That's what these are all about. All right. All right. Lastly, slam balls. I'm sure everybody has had the fun time of picking up a ball, slamming it on the ground, picking up a ball, slamming it on the ground. Slam balls are great. Usually you want a pretty heavy ball. They are a little more expensive in the medicine ball world. You do want to make sure that they don't bounce. Funny story from my past. I had an athlete who was pretty strong, grabbed the wrong ball, and as he went to smash it on the ground, it was a high bounce medicine ball. It bounced off the ground and hit him right in the face. So he felt pretty dumb, but it was my fault. I should have warned him to grab a slam ball. Couple things to think about here. Number one, lighter is better. I see so many people with their athletes picking up this massive ball they can't even hold, and they never slam it. They just drop it. There's no actual slam. But if you look at this guy in picture 3, he's got triple extension going on, right? He's creating that vertical force vector, and he's engaging, he's throwing this thing down, he's engaging and chopping hard. That's what we're looking for. We're not just looking for somebody to lift it up, let go, lift it up, let go. So are they drop balls or are they slam balls? I challenge you. If you give somebody one that's too heavy, they cannot slam it. They cannot. So I would say, if I were buying balls for general fitness, I would top out. I would have the heaviest ball I would have would be about 18 pounds. I'd probably have a lot at the 14 and 16 pound range just to have them slam the hell out of it. And I'd probably have a few at that 6 or 8 pound range. So my old ladies and my young athletes can get the speed aspect of slamming this sucker down. But man, when I see 30, 40, 50, I saw 80 pound slam ball. I don't think you're getting slamming at that. I don't care if it's Rich Froning holding that damn thing. He's not slamming it. He's letting it drop and maybe assisting gravity. So something to think about. So slam balls are fairly cheap, easy to store, fun, but you got to find other uses for them too. You don't want to commit to all that expensive balls without multiple uses. All right, so let's move from that specialty area into the intermediate level. This is where we start seeing equipment, but I would say that this equipment is all under $1,500. Maybe it's under $1,000. The intermediate means it is dedicated equipment. It's dedicated equipment. People seem to enjoy it, but it still has a pretty big cost. Everything up to this point, nothing's over $100 that we've talked about. So this is where we're starting to get into that, except for the foam plyo box. That's where we're starting to get into big cost. There's a lot of advantages here too. Number one, we've got to throw it on this list, is rowers. People, especially CrossFitters, love rowers. Really effective. There's some good here. Let's talk about the good. Number one, they're non-weight bearing. That can be good and bad. The bad is it doesn't burn nearly as many calories as when you are, in fact, weight bearing. The good here is if you're working with runners, this lady over here looks like a runner, triathletes, field athletes, where you're like, they are getting enough time on their feet. This is a great way to get them off their feet and get them exercising hard. Other good, people seem to enjoy the motion, that kind of repetitive. It's almost like Zen-like. It's repetitive and it's a lot of fun. Third great thing about rowers is they'll stand up vertically. So they take up very little space. You stand them up vertically, all you have to deal with is the flywheel and the legs. And that's about a 3 foot by 2 foot rectangle. You can stuff them in the corner or something like that. When you need it, you pull them down, and they're pretty good. Another advantage, you don't have to adjust the height. As long as somebody's feet sit here, it doesn't matter if they're 6'8" or they're 5'8" or 4'8", they're going to fit on the rower and have a good time. The downside, big guys, heavy people, especially large male athletes, they can get this wheel spinning, and so they'll appear to have an easier time covering the same amount of distance as their female counterparts. So there's a little bit of difficulty there. The other issue that you got to think about is if you're rehabbing somebody who has a flexion intolerant back or even an extension intolerant back, this can exacerbate those conditions because they're doing repeated flexion extension, and it's under load. So give that some thought. I did that for a long time. I couldn't figure out why people weren't getting better in their back pain from their back pain. And I'm like, oh, I'm assigning them rowing, which is just resetting all the work we've done. So that's that. One great thing about Rowers Concept 2 is a great company. They'll repair anything. Their customer service is unbelievable. And they are top-notch company to deal with. I would buy their product before anybody else's. How about air bikes? Air bikes are good. You can see this guy he has experienced how effective they are. They're so effective that they suck. I mean, they absolutely suck. I've heard many times there's nothing good that comes from an air bike. They are a tough workout. Good news is they're very space efficient. It's self-limiting. There's nobody I've ever seen that can max that thing out. They produce a ton of resistance, a ton of results in a very short amount of time. So that can be advantageous. Plus, for the price, I think these are sitting around $800 to $1,000 each now. That price range, these things will last you forever. I think it's awesome. And a couple brand the downside, by the way, is you got to set the seat height and length specific for the patient or client. That takes a little bit of time, but if you teach them how to do it, it's not too bad. Another downside of them, they're loud. Like if you have a small area, somebody's on an air bike, you ain't hearing anything else going on in that space. So they are a little bit loud. Another positive is they're small footprint. They're easy to move, and people seem to enjoy them. Another positive is you can see this gentleman is resting his feet on the pegs. You can have people rest their feet on these pegs, or is he on the pedal? I can't tell. Anyways, there's some pegs up front here where they can rest their feet and just use their arms to pedal he's on the peg. They can just use their arms to operate the bike. It's really good if you're doing some lower body rehab. That's a good advantage there. So they sit around $800 to $1,000. I'll tell you what, I've owned the Air Assault bike. I've owned Schwinn Airdynes, and the one bike I hear everybody talk about that is just built better from the ground up is the Rogue Echo air bike. It's just night and day different. Instead of a chain, they use a belt drive. Their fan is better designed. It's a little more quiet. It's beefier. I would just say that would be the one I would buy, because I think that's one of those things you buy it once, you never have to buy it again. Rogue's pretty good about supporting their equipment, so I think it's repairable rather than replaceable. And I would buy that brand. It's the best one. All right. One last thing. This is a piece of equipment that I think is a fantastic cardio equipment that just never gets mentioned. I don't know if it's because it's goofy or I'm out on the West Coast and people, don't play hockey that much out here, although we have the Golden Knights. Night up. Anyways, the slide board. Man, you put on these booties and you learn how to slide sideways. There are so many great things here. Number one, these things, a good slide board is in the $800 range, maybe $1,000. They are a little bit tough to store. They're very long and slick. Okay. But here's some advantages. Number one, it's totally different. So it's not something that Somebody's going to go like, I could go to your gym and do that, but I do that somewhere else, like with an air bike. How many air bikes have you ridden? How many places have them now? Unbelievable. This is totally different. Number two, it takes finesse. It's a learned habit. So people get frustrated early on, but once they get in the habit of it, they really seem to enjoy it. Number three, it's one of the few cardio, if it's not the only cardio exercise that's done in a lateral format rather than linear, meaning almost every single cardio equipment makes you go forward, back. And this is one of the few that's making you move sideways. That's great. It's different. It doesn't wear people out the same. You're getting another positive, you're getting a lot of stimulus of that, of the hip rotators and the external rotators of the hip in a different direction, right? There's just so much advantage that comes from that. I think slide boards are an awesome addition. They do take a little bit of getting used to. They take a little bit of training. But I'll tell you this, I've never had anybody bought a slide board and regretted it. I've never heard anybody say that. And once they teach their clients, I've never heard a client say, this is dumb. So I'd highly recommend looking at a slide board. They do take up a little bit of room. I think the big ones are 10 feet long. So if you only got, if you don't have the space for them, that can be an issue. But man, are they fun. They are a hoot and they are hard as hell. Doing 20-second sprints on a slide board will kick your butt. All right. Cool. You can also use them for super slick, like reverse lunges. Reverse lunges on a slide board is the best way to get the stance leg glute into serious extension. This is a great exercise. You can make a lot of things harder. Think about like floor sliders, when you add that sliding pad to make things harder. This is a great way to make things more challenging. So they have other uses, right? All right. So lastly, we got the advanced level. There's only really two here. One is well known, the other one, not so much. But first up, the self-powered treadmill. These things sit around $7,000 to $10,000 each. The Woodway is the one I'm most familiar with, although I understand Assault Fitness, Air Runner. There's about 4 of them on the market now. I've seen them all the way down to $4,000. I don't know how good the quality is at that mark, but I know the Woodway is like a premier level treadmill. Anyways, these have curves because they're self-powered, but people absolutely love these. And if you want to teach people to sprint, I think that's a great idea. Number one, nobody sprints, right? Especially adults. And so teaching them how to do that in small impulses, as in the last 5 minutes of a class twice a week, would be a good way to balance. Like there's a lot of injury risk, but there's so much good that comes from it. Getting people to pursue that, it's a challenge. You got to teach them, but there's so much good that comes from that. And look, nobody's going to, unless they're playing softball with their buddies, nobody's going to sprint without coaching, right? These are great. There are some downsides. It takes some getting used to. I've seen plenty of people fly off the back of these things because they're not paying attention. For whatever reason, another good thing is that curve really makes you maintain good technique. And you'll see some of those videos on Instagram where somebody is absolutely flying on one of these. If that's the case, I think it's prudent to have you or your coach or whoever's working the class be behind at the end of the treadmill in case things go wrong. You can keep them from falling too hard. All right. So I think that's good. The downside with these is footprint's pretty big and they're expensive. Kirk Mason, who just absolutely is crushing it up there in Minot, North Dakota. I think he has 4 of these, 4 or 6 of these. And I think when I asked him, he said he probably would have cut the number in half. But he'd be a good guy to ask. He's a runner himself. So they if you're making that big of a purchase, $10, $20, $30,000 worth of equipment, it's probably worth asking a few questions. The last thing is the VersaClimber. This is something that got popular for a while and then seemed to fall off. But I love this. I love it in the most hated way possible. The VersaClimber is pretty awesome in the fact that it is a hard as hell workout. Think about bear crawling. If you've ever bear crawled, you know how difficult that is. Now flip it vertical and try and go up the face of a mountain. That's what this freaking feels like. It sucks. It's hard. The good news is it's incredibly effective. You do 3 or 4 20-second sprints on this thing. That counts as a session. You don't need to adjust it for different heights of patients or clients. You just throw them on there and they grab the handles. That's an advantage. Another advantage, it's teaching them or reinforcing that cross crawl pattern. Fantastic. And the little bit of forward lean here really seems to be the perfect balance between getting some weight on the joints and not being able to screw this exercise up. It's almost self-correcting. Be ready for people to just get smoked pretty damn quick, though. Holy Moses. I really like the reinforcement of the cross crawl pattern that occurs with the VersaClimber. Here's the biggest downside. The last time I looked at these, they were about $7,500 a piece, maybe $8,000. And that's not even including shipping, which God, I hope they send it for free. But it's not a huge piece of equipment for $8,000. You know, you're not getting a whole lot of use other than that intense cardio burst for $8,000. So consider that. It is pretty cool. You can stick them in a corner. They don't take up a whole lot of space, probably about as much as a rower, maybe a little bit more, but you can really put them in a corner. And if you get people using them, I've heard a few different people say, like Ben Greenfield, it's the hardest cardio workout he's ever done in his life. So it's awesome, works well, but expensive. So you can decide. Now, if you can find them on the, Facebook Marketplace or something like that, man, get after it. They are a hoot. All right. Well, if you got any questions, post them up in the Clinic Gym Hybrid discussion group. I hope this was useful. Love to continue this conversation on the group. I think it'd be great for everybody to discuss it. And, if you're running a few different pieces of cardio equipment, we'd love to hear from you. What have you learned? What would you redo? What are you glad you did? I think that's important. And also post your favorite equipment and make sure you post your square footage in the group. We'd love to hear about it. The reason I want you to post the square footage is it's easy to say, I have a bunch of treadmills if you have a bunch of space. But if you only had 400 square feet, would you have those treadmills? I don't know. So that's worth talking about. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for being here. I hope you like this. If you did, leave a comment down below. Let us know if you like these kind of webinars and if they're informative and useful. Throw up another idea you want us to kind of talk about. We're happy to help here at Clinic Gym Hybrid. With that, if you are opening a clinic gym, or you're adding a gym to an existing clinic, congratulations, you're on the right path. The research backs it up. The practice guidelines back it up. Exercise is the key to getting people better long-term, and I commend you for doing it. If we can help, hit me up at Josh@Clinic Gym Hybrid. Happy to help. All right. Oh, and if you haven't, check out our at clinicgymhybrid.com. We have live courses this year. One's coming up in St. Louis, Missouri, at Winchester Spine and Sport. That's Brett Winchester's place there. But join us for one of our live courses talking all about this model. What exercise should you do? What equipment should you buy? How should you lay out your gym? How do you train your staff? All that and more will be covered. We'd love to have you there. All right. Well, I am Dr. Josh Satterlee, and I will see you later. Thanks.
Thanks so much for checking out these videos. I hope they're useful. We'll cover things like rehab, exercise, business model, progressions, layout, everything else that helps you build a clinic. So if you're interested, you can click here, there to get more videos just like this.